Hello and welcome to the Met Office 10-day trend. Meteorological autumn may have begun, but if you live in Western Scotland, Northern Ireland or Northwest England, you may be forgiven for thinking you've entirely missed meteorological summer. And that's because summer 2024 in the northwest of the UK was considerably wetter than average. The blue colours on this map show how rainfall was above the 100% of the average for summer across Western Scotland, Northwest England and parts of Northern Ireland, and in some spots across Northwest Scotland we saw 1.5 times, 150% of typical summer rainfall. It was also considerably cooler than average in the same locations. And in fact, although this map shows how the average maximum temperature through summer compared with the 30-year average, if you look at the day-to-day maximum temperatures, some parts of Western Scotland, Kinlochew, Achnagat, didn't see a temperature reach 24 Celsius throughout June, July and August. That compares with May, when those same locations saw temperatures above 25 degrees. Better late than never, you might say. This Friday could see temperatures higher across parts of Western Scotland and even parts of Northern Ireland compared with the entire summer season. Highest temperatures perhaps since May, or a smaller chance, the highest temperatures in some spots of the year so far. Here's what's happening. The jet stream at the moment is extending south across the UK. A very elongated setup, and when it elongates this much, it can cut off from the main flow into a entirely separate circulation. This is known as a cut-off low, and you get an upper low and a surface low just cut off from the main flow of the jet stream, so just meandering erratically around, separate from the main flow, and therefore getting stuck somewhere. Now, earlier in the week, if you watched the week ahead forecast, there was some uncertainty about where this cut-off low would end up, whether it would be to the east of the UK or to the south, with very big differences across the UK as a result. It looks very likely now that it's going to be cut off, and it's going to stick to the south of the UK through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday and even into Monday. That means some very heavy rainfall just to the north of that, pushing into southern parts of the UK for several days in a row. That's of key concern in the next few days, and those spells of rain are going to add up and they're going to cause some impacts. Now, this is the rainfall on Thursday afternoon. Heavy, persistent and some thundery outbreaks of rain moving up from the near continent and affecting South Wales, parts of West Country, Southwest England, South Coast. And this is 4 p.m. on Thursday, but really fast forwarding after that, it continues to be wet across the same locations. The rain ebbing and flowing, but essentially further spiralling bands of rain pushing north across southern counties of England. Easing off for a time for South Wales, but really south of the M4 corridor, that's where the wettest weather is expected to be through Thursday and into the start of Friday. Then by Friday afternoon, another spell of rain moves north across these same areas. I wouldn't take the location of these rain bands too literally. It all depends on the instability over northern France, for example, and how thundery outbreaks of rain develop there. And those can be very uncertain in the computer modelling, and therefore it's a little uncertain at the moment in terms of exactly where we'll see the heaviest rain. But this is the total rainfall through Thursday and Friday. The key over here on the right, and just indicates widely 50, 60 millimetres across Devon, Cornwall, Somerset into Dorset, parts of Hampshire, for example, and in some places more than 100 millimetres through that period. In fact, one or two spots could see 100 millimetres or so in the space of 24 hours on Thursday, and then a few other spots, not necessarily the same locations, could see again 100 millimetres or so on Friday. And that amount of rainfall across southern parts of the UK could cause some impacts, localised flooding, river flooding and transport disruptions. So yellow rain warning in force for Thursday and Friday. Stay up to date with the latest updates on that through the Met Office website and app. Also, some rainfall starting to accumulate later Friday further north of the M4 corridor as these bands of rain start to move north once again. But initially, the main cause for concern is South Wales into the south of England, especially the West Country and the southwest. Why is the rain going to be so heavy? It's because of instability in the atmosphere, because of the cut-off upper low and the surface low over France, and also a lot of humidity present in the atmosphere. Now, this is the time of recording, Wednesday, relatively cool air across the UK. But as that low pressure forms over France, we're going to see this circulation drag very warm and humid air from Central Europe over the North Sea and into the UK. So those colours turning more orange as the days progress over the next few days. Easterly winds, yes, but not a cold easterly wind by any stretch of the imagination. This is humid air returning to the UK. And that not only will lead to those heavy outbreaks of rain across southern parts of the country, but it'll also lead to extensive cloud cover. Thick layers of cloud in the south, where we've got that heavy rain, as well as some hill fog and coastal fog in the south. But not only that, across eastern parts of the UK, especially northeast England into eastern Scotland, we're going to see Fret and Har. A lot of low cloud just persisting along that east coast and perhaps a few miles inland as well. Low cloud, mist and murk persisting through Thursday and Friday. A stark contrast compared with western Scotland and Northern Ireland, northwest England, where the cloud will be well broken up by Friday, and lengthy spells of sunshine will develop, and that is reflected in the temperatures. So not only have we got the humidity and the sunshine on Friday, we've also got the Föhn effect, where the air dries up over the hills to the east, and then as it descends again, drier air, it's warmer, and allows temperatures to reach into the mid-20s. If we see 25 degrees or so in some of those locations I mentioned earlier, then it would indeed be the warmest day since May. So 24, 25 degrees, 23 there for Northern Ireland, but high teens where we've got the mist and low cloud along the east coast. It's not just the northwest we'll see the warmest air. It's also likely to be relatively warm through parts of North Wales into the Midlands, East Anglia, for example, 25 to 27 Celsius on Friday. So for some on Friday, a return to summer-like warmth, but for others, some very wet weather indeed in the south. And you can see that contrast on Friday in the temperature compared with average map here. This is compared with the September maximum temperature average, considerably above average through central and northwestern parts of the UK, closer to average in the northeast and more especially the south. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that there's essentially a knife-edge gradient there between the clear skies, humid and very warm weather, if the sun comes through, temperatures in the 25, 26, 27 range across central parts, and the very wet weather across southern areas, and with that added uncertainty about the exact position of the bands of rain in the south. I would bear that in mind, because if you're in some of these areas, say across South Wales through Bristol, just around north of the M4, where there's that boundary nearby, then whether you're on the very warm and sunny side or whether you're on the very wet side will make a huge difference, and the margins are very fine indeed. So your weather app might oscillate every few hours depending on whether it's putting the rain band in one position or the other, and it will only be a matter of miles whether you're in that wet weather or in the very warm weather. So that's something to bear in mind if you live in that boundary zone where it's, wet on one side and very warm on the other side. Likewise, temperatures overnight are likely to be considerably above average, especially across northern parts of the UK. So some very warm nights coming up heading into the weekend. And we keep a lot of that cloud cover once again on Saturday morning across northeastern and eastern parts of the country. I think the rain easing off for a time on Saturday, perhaps a drier interlude in the south, but further wet weather's likely to come along later, so temperatures recovering for a time, likely to stay very cloudy and drizzly across southern counties of England, especially the southwest, perhaps South Wales, whilst again Western Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing the best of the warm sunny spells. Into Sunday, another band of rain moves north. This time it moves a little further north into central parts of the country. Again, heavy outbreaks of rain, but a little bit of uncertainty about exactly where this rain band will end up. Drier, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, still some mist and drizzle around the northeast coast. Less warm, I'd say, by Sunday across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. The winds are starting to change direction, starting to pull a bit more cloud in, but staying largely dry. Now, I mentioned the uncertainty about the distribution of the rain again through the weekend, And it's even more uncertain, unfortunately, across central and southern parts where we'll see the heaviest outbreaks of rain through the weekend and the largest rainfall accumulations. Some areas, again, seeing 50 to 75 millimetres of rain through the weekend. But different weather models have slightly different locations for that rain. So the American model there has it more across southern parts of the UK. The European model has it further north into parts of Mid Wales, the Midlands, for example, East Anglia, whilst the Met Office model has it somewhere in between. So that's something we'll keep a close eye on, and hopefully we'll be able to update you a bit more in the next couple of days. Either way, the trend through Sunday and into Monday is for the wetter weather to start to move towards the southeast. Could be further heavy downpours across East Anglia and the southeast into Monday as that low moves away. But by this stage, there's a big change in the bigger picture. With low pressure to the east and higher pressure to the west, we're going to start to see northerly winds. And this, by Tuesday to Thursday, 12th of September, is the most likely weather pattern coming out of all the different computer models. And relatively high confidence about this. Low pressure to the east, higher pressure to the west, and much cooler northerly winds. These are the temperature anomalies, -4, -3, that sort of thing. And with that northerly wind, we're likely to see quite a number of showers coming into northern and eastern Scotland in particular, northeast England, for example. Drier towards the west and the south, but feeling considerably cooler everywhere, particularly following the relatively humid air that we'll see over the next few days. But at least it will be drier in the south, even if it's wetter towards the northeast. Then a bit of uncertainty heading into the following weekend, as is naturally the case 10, 11 days ahead. But it looks fairly likely that we'll see a return to Atlantic weather dominating, with low pressure arriving and that bringing spells of rain into the northwest and wind switching to more of a southwesterly rather than a northeasterly. That shows up quite well in this chart. Now, this takes a bit of explaining, but this essentially tells us whether northerlies or southerlies are most likely each day through the next 2 weeks. Northerlies are coloured in blue, southerlies are coloured in red. This takes many different computer model runs from 50, 100 different models, and it shows on the top row there the most recent output from all those different models for each day, whether the blues are showing up strongly. That means northerlies are very likely. That's the middle of next week, for example. And then this switch to southerlies from mid-September. And the previous model runs are all listed below, so you can see there's that consistency from blues middle of next week to reds middle of September. This next chart shows a similar thing, but instead of northerlies and southerlies, it's westerlies or easterlies. And the westerlies are coloured in blue this time, so some westerlies around. Is my alarm going off? Beg your pardon. Some westerlies around the or easterlies, for example, some weak easterlies around the middle of the week next week, and then back to westerlies. So southwesterlies essentially the main theme from the middle of September. And just to finish up with the temperature trend for two relatively different locations across the UK, Southampton and Glasgow. Glasgow shows this especially well, this increase in temperatures. The red boxes there going above the average line through the weekend as that warm air comes in from the east. Then this sudden drop around the middle of next week to below average before a recovery towards average around the middle of September as those southwesterlies return and as low pressure returns from the Atlantic. Southampton, similar trend, but it's not going to be quite as warm. Temperatures won't be quite as far above average through this weekend because of those spells of rain and the increase in cloud. So big swings in the weather over the next 10 days. But of course, for day-to-day updates, we'll keep you updated right here on YouTube. Bye-bye.